Hey, welcome to another discussion. Today, well, let me rephrase this. I've had this conversation happen a couple times in the last few days, and it's about people who are struggling with or are looking at their life and what's happened and questioning, was it even worth it? What have I, it's like this was a nightmare, and it's like, what was I even fighting for? And I mean, like a few days ago, I saw somebody post something on it, and I kind of checked in with them, and then the same discussion happened, a few days later with a coaching client, and I've seen some other people just have this epiphany about, was it worth it? It's like questioning what they've done. And I don't know. See, I have this different philosophy. I guess I have had that feeling, and just looking at my life and basically saying, man, should I have done something different? But the problem with that is to get to that point to where you can take a step back and look at everything. You're trying to make that decision based on the information and the experience that you've already had. And the other problem with this is anybody who is at a different stage in this or who hasn't experienced this will typically have the response, I would never give up on my kids. And I'm sure there's some people who are going to watch this are going like, well, I would never give up on my kids. I would do anything for them, and I would try anything and everything. And I think that feeling right there is the key to the issue, key to the problem, so to speak. And what I mean by that is take me, for instance. And I actually had somebody 12 years ago, a friend of mine, really close friend, we're still good friends now, who at that time told me, just let her go, let her have the kids. You're going to lose. Well, you're going to lose anyways. And part of it is he was being triggered by his own experiences. Like, well, I was never able to be a dad, so, no one gets to be a dad. And the problem for me at that time is I couldn't do that. There's no way I would have been able to live with myself if I would have just said, peace out. There you go. Take everything. I don't care. I'm done with this. I'm not going to fight it. Or there's other people who would say, well, the kids will come back to you. They'll always want to see their father. So just, don't stay in this nightmare. Don't stay in this nightmare. Try to pick the pieces up of your life and start over. And there's no way that I would have been able to do that. And to be perfectly honest, I think there's no way most of the people who are watching this right now would be able to do that. And here's the problem, or here's the reality of it. You have to live with yourself if you make that decision at the beginning. And I think most people, when they get to a point where they feel like they have to give up at the early stage. Now, granted, this has all come up not because of someone, at the, day one or, the first few months of this, or the first year of this saying, I can't do this and I tap out. We're talking about people who've been through this for a decade. Kids are getting ready to age out, and they're just like, what the hell have I done? Why, what was the point of this? I've dumped all this money. I've done all this time, and I didn't achieve the results I was hoping for, or it's been a nightmare, or my kids turned against me. And I think the reality of it is that you got to ask yourself, could you have made that, the decision you're talking about right now, could you have made that 10 years ago? Roll the clock back to the beginning of this without now, if I'm saying, today, now, if you could like, crystal ball and you can see and experience what the next decade is going to be in your life. But that's not what we're talking about, because that's impossible. So could you have rolled the clock back 10 years, made the decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to fight this fight. I'll hunker down. I'll take my licks, and I'm just going to try to start over. I'm going to rebuild from this, and I'm going to start over. And I think that is almost impossible for a lot of the people to do today. Because to do that means you have to deal with the regret potentially. I think most people fall in this category where you're going to deal with that regret. I had a conversation with my own father. I've talked about it in the past, but I'll just bring it back up. Where when I had the epiphany that I was living his life now and my kids were living my life, and I was at the point, this was I'm trying to think, it was probably even before I started the channel. And I remember I had this epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, I understand my father now. I understand why he had to put a barrier up against me, because I was weaponized by my mom. I was doing things that I didn't think were cruel, saying things that I didn't think were cruel, that were just devastating. And here I am living that same experience, and my kids are doing the same thing. And I started thinking about, well, maybe I need to start distancing myself. Maybe I need to reevaluate this. And I was just like, holy crap. I understand what he did. And there's a point I'm getting to on this. And that is, I picked up the phone, I called him, and I said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I apologize. I'm like, hey, I apologize for what I was doing or how I was when I was a kid. I didn't realize it. I'm sorry I did that. And he actually got really upset, not mad at me, but he was upset at himself, because he was like, he felt bad because he's like, I didn't, I should have done more. That's what he said. He says, well, I should have done more. And I'm like, you did everything you possibly could. There was no, you didn't have any other information. I mean, granted, you're talking about, for me, for him and that, I mean, I'm 52 now. I mean, that stuff happened when that's what, 40 some odd years ago. I mean, that's a different world 4 decades ago. But he had that pent up regret. And I think that's the problem with it, is like you have to try something enough to where if it falls apart, that you can be like, you know what, I did everything I possibly can. And there's been a few times throughout my experience where I had gotten to my breaking point where I was just like, oh dear God, let me just lose. I can't keep doing this. I mean, fortunately, in my situation, I was able to push through that, and I have a decent relationship with all my kids. But don't get me wrong. I mean, that's not to say that the last 10 years has been a bowl of frickin' rainbows. It hasn't. It's been really tough. And I mean, even with everything, it's like, I just look at everything and it's like, well, I mean, I can even talk about the graduation I went to for my middle daughter. You guys saw where I posted she graduated with her Bachelor of Arts in Animation with a minor in art history. And I was talking with Debbie about this, and it's like, when we were there, it wasn't like we could just get lost in the moment and enjoy it. There was tension throughout the entire experience. It wasn't, we couldn't really let our guard down. And it was like, we just kind of had to muscle through it. And I mean, I was looking, I'm like, man, this is so disappointing. There's no reason that this should have ever been this way. There was no conversations with the ex like, oh, wow, isn't it so wonderful that, our child has accomplished this. It was like, okay, how do I just get through this? It's like everything gets tainted. anyways, my point is this. If you happen to be one of these people that are questioning yourself on that, I believe, first off, that we have to try everything we possibly can, right? And it's not easy. When you have kids, it's a responsibility. When you make the mistake of marrying a toxic, high conflict, probably disordered person, there's a consequence to it. And we have a responsibility to try to be parents. Actually, man, I have had this conversation a lot lately. This topic has actually been coming up quite a bit. It's really kind of surprising. And at the end of and I've actually had this what I'm talking about right now. I've actually had one-on-one with people where I'm just like, you can't do that to yourself. You can't second guess your decision to try to do the best thing to be a part of your kid's life, or to be a grounding force for your kids, or to make sure that, they had a lifeline. Doesn't mean if we show up that they're going to accept it. I was lucky in some regards. Well, I think the reality is maybe just my personality, right? It's like I understood I was going to take a bunch of punches on this. And I have. I've had really bizarre experiences with my kids and them basically throwing me under the bus and taking, a bunch of just blows to the face. And, just kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to completely, don't get me wrong. There were times where I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm sick of trying to beat my head against the wall to make sure that these kids don't have the same mistake. But I would never basically get so angry that I would just act on that. I think maybe it's just in my life, I've realized a lot of times, stop and think before you act. And that's what's gotten me to the point I'm at now. And everything's almost done, right? My youngest is graduating from high school in less than maybe 8 days on the 1st. I think that's next Thursday. So 7 days or 8 days? Yeah. Turns 18 at the end of the summer. It's pretty much, I've done my part. I've tried my best, and I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. But for God's sakes, please do not look at the end of this and just say, now looking at what's happened today, I should have, why did I do this? I shouldn't have done it. I should have just said, okay, fine. The first time that it was like, I hate you, Daddy. Just said, okay. I'm not gonna fight anymore, and let it go. And you can't look at the situation you're in now, look back and say, well, now that I know everything, I should have made a different decision. Well, come on. I can look at my entire life and say, well, I should have made a different decision. I could look back when I was in high school, should have made a different decisions. I can look back, with the relationship with my father, it's like there's all kinds of things that I should have tried different, that I should have done differently. But I made the decisions with the best information that I had at the time. Some of it was completely flawed. Going back to the relationship, I knew that there was something wrong with the person I was going to marry. The red flags were out all over the place. It was like, and there were times even before it that, I had that epiphany. I had that flash of reality saying, oh my God, I shouldn't have done it. And I shouldn't have. I should have had, I should have somehow worked on myself and recognized that this was going to be a colossal mistake and not done it. You know? I mean, but you can't do that to yourself. You make the best decision that you possibly can. And the only thing you can do is say, today, I'm going to make a different decision. I can look back and see how my decisions have affected myself. So if I continue to make the same decisions, obviously I'm going to get the same results. So I can try something different. You know? And that's, I mean, so you do that. And I've always looked at this. I've always looked at our experiences about, you know, like whenever it blows apart, whether it blows apart because you get discarded, whether it blows apart because you finally have an epiphany and you set a boundary, you start to grow emotionally and you're like, hey, you know what? No, this isn't right anymore. And everything flames out because you all know that if you frickin' test a boundary with a narcissist, they lose their ever-loving mind and they discard you in a frickin' second. And you go from being, you know, the one to the none over, you know, in an instant. You don't beat yourself up on this. Say, okay, you know what? I got it now. I learned my lesson. I figured this part of the universe, the world out. Okay, what do I do going forward? What I would say, like if you have a kid that everything is finally flamed out at 17 or 18 years old, you tried your best, right? Maybe leave the door. I would definitely recommend leaving the door open and trying not to let it turn you bitter and corrupt your entire life. So if at some point that child decides to say, oh crap, you know what? Maybe I need to reevaluate this, that it's not just completely closed. And I know that's hard too. But the reality is you owe it to yourself to be able to pick up the pieces and start to have a life again. You know, sitting there looking and going, oh my, I mean, I could do this all day long. I could turn around and I could look at everything that my ex has done to just fuck up my life, the kids' lives, continues to make, you know, really weird decisions. I could sit there and I could just be bitter about that all day, every day. It accomplishes nothing. Nothing. And what I've known is or what I've seen and I've experienced is by shifting my energy, my thoughts, my focus, however you want to describe it, towards something positive, towards something that makes me feel at peace, something that makes me feel good. That, I mean, once you start doing that, the person can't take that crap, can't take anything from you anymore. And I understand some of this is money related, like whenever they just frickin' destroy you financially, it's hard to where every day is a struggle, but you just got to find a way to say, okay, you know what? I'm rebaselining my life. I've talked about that in a bazillion videos, that you have to say, okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm done thinking about this. I'm done letting this person occupy any more space in my life and comparing my current situation, my current life to my past experience or expectation or what it used to be, because that gets you nowhere. It gets you nowhere. You have to say, okay, you know what? If I should have had a big house on a hill and a nice car and all this stuff, okay, fine, I don't. You know, for me, I had a point where, I mean, I was like drowning in debt, barely able to pay. I mean, literally my monthly budget had like an $80 buffer a month. I mean, so 2 paychecks, you know, every 2 weeks, so whatever. That number for those 2 paychecks to support me for a month, I had $80 buffer. So anything else that happened, need medication? Oh, you're screwed. Oh crap, another trip into town, gas, town's an hour away from me. Don't have money for gas. God forbid, whenever I had to go to urgent care or the kids had to go to urgent care, it's like, oh crap, I got to pay the $30 to get them into urgent care. I got to pay the $30 to get them, to drive there. Maybe not 30, but whatever, let's say 30 plus, eat something there, whatever. And then maybe another, depending, another $10 to $40 on, so one thing messed up. I could, I just finally said, fuck, whatever. I'm not going to fucking worry about it anymore. I'll make minimum payments. I'm not going to focus on this. And it was hard. There were times where something would come up and it would get under my craw. And I'm like, God, fuck, because of this person, I can't pay my bill, or back in the day, whenever mine would, God, I normally don't tap into this, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is you got every right to be angry, but you got to work through that, because I could easily be right here today. This whole channel could be me just bitching about how bad my life is and how I got screwed and how the family court system is a pile of shit. And all of it's true. I mean, don't get me wrong, but what does that accomplish? How does that get your life back if that's all you focus on? How does it get your life back if at the end of this, you're like, why did I even fight? You fought because it was the right thing to do. Just because you fight something and you have the good fight doesn't mean the good guy always wins. But you don't let it destroy your life. I hope there was somebody out there that needed to hear this. I'm just taking the feeling that the universe is giving me a sign that I needed to talk about this, because it's been coming up too much in my world, where people I care about are expressing this to me, and I'm seeing it posted as well. And I'm like, man, there's some people who are really struggling with this now. The thing I want to finish this with, and I hope that from watching my channel and stuff like that, you believe from my old videos and everything that our stories are similar, our experiences are similar. And I'm here to tell you, my life is not perfect, but it's freaking amazing. It's like there's so much peace that I've been able to find. And there's crap that's happened at work. There's crap that happens with the kids. There's a crap that happens. It's like, it doesn't mean everything went away, and it doesn't mean I'm just saying, oh, everything is perfect. I'm not saying that, but I like this life I have now. And don't get me wrong. I wish I hadn't, my finances hadn't been ruined. I wish I could, was living in a house I owned or was almost paid off, that type of thing. But I'm grateful. I thank God, universe, whatever you want to call it, that I broke out of this. Yes, this last 12 years has been, not the most fun, but I can't even imagine if I was still in the fog and still living in that past environment and having to endure daily what I watch my kids go through. So every one of us has escaped, whether we did it ourselves or whether they did it to us. And we're given an opportunity to pick our lives up and make the most of it. And if you're sitting there thinking, damn it, I shouldn't have fought for this for the last, this has just been a nightmare. The courts, it just didn't work out. What the hell? Well, you did your best. You tried. Sometimes people win. There's a lot of people on this channel who have expressed, that they have achieved a victory in family court. It is possible, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it doesn't mean you have to roll over and let it ruin your life either. So on that, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know what you think. Hopefully this resonated and was helpful for you. If you know somebody who could use this, share it with them. Hopefully this discussion will help. And on that, I will catch you on the next one. Take care.